The difference is that probably Mark Homan knew much better than me about growing a big successful business and portfolio was your network. Who'd agree your network is your net worth? Okay, so when Mark started in property, he already had a lot of wealthy friends. He went to a private school, actually he went to two because he got expelled from his first one. He doesn't like me telling people, but we're all friends. For smoking weed, he definitely doesn't like me telling people that, but you know, I just did. So he got expelled from one good private school and went to an... Actually, that's quite a good strategy, because you get to meet loads more rich people. I might teach my son that. All right, so, yes, I'll try them all. So, by the time I met Mark, he'd been to King's in Peterborough and Oundle, both really good schools, and all of his friends were sons of multi-millionaires. And when I met Mark and found out about that, because all my friends were skin, and we had a little bit of a sort of an anti-rich people defence mechanism, I judged him. And I thought he was a bit of a toff, and I thought he was elitist, and you know, he wasn't giving ordinary people a chance. And obviously we all now know, because of what we work on together, that that's a very smart thing that Mark did. And I guess in the early days, he didn't do it on purpose. But I guess because Mark set up his first business when he was 14, 14. He met people who also had similar interests. So, for example, his friend Sam Burt had businesses when he was 15. Mark and Sam Burt used to go over to Ireland once a year when they were 17, 18, 19. They'd travel over, they'd buy a car, new, they'd bring it back on the ferry, they'd drive them like they nicked them back to Peterborough, and then they'd sell them at a 20% margin. And they were all the time, as mates, doing all these entrepreneurial things, because their dads were entrepreneurs. Sam Burt's dad, Ken Burt, £20 million a year business. Adrian Gott's dad, super wealthy. Adrian Gott now works with, who's one of Mark's friends, who's actually on the yacht with at the moment. You'll see him. Have you been told how you'll be speaking to Mark today? No. You haven't? No. You now know, don't you? You'll be seeing Mark do his economy and finance from his yacht. Which, you think that's cool. You wait, he hasn't got his top on, you don't want to be seeing that. I think if you look like that, you want to keep it on. Anyway, so his friend who he's on the yacht with, Adrian Gott, JV's with someone who's the largest egg producer in the world. He's worth about £500 million. I've often told you that Mark flies on private jet over to Monaco and places like that is with these kind of people. So the thing that made the biggest difference, obviously along with mindset, was meeting amazing, inspirational millionaires or millionaire business owners and whatever. And that's one of the biggest changes that's happened in my life, I would say, is the people I spend time with now. I don't know, many of you have either gone through that or you're going through that. And so that's why I'm really excited for you right now. Because if I'd have met this chap, who I'm about to introduce to you to 7 or 8 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been friends because we probably wouldn't have had a lot in common. And it wouldn't have been because I didn't like him. It'd have been because he'd have looked at me and the way I was, and in a nice way, he'd have probably thought I was a bit of a dick. Thank you for not laughing at that part. That's nice of you. You know, obviously, the places I go, the cars I drive, all I was interested in was getting pissed, I was skinned, blah, blah, blah. I was quite negative, you know, and so our paths probably wouldn't have crossed. And our paths crossed by accident because I'm good friends with someone that works for this chap, and also one of his office buildings, because he's got offices around the world, but one of his office buildings is there. And it's kind of amazing who you bump into in life. Because there is Matt, who I think is an amazing guy and really regard him as a friend. And there is Neville Wright. Like, I didn't even think two inspirational people like that lived in Peterborough. because I'd never met any of them before, but I didn't know I was repelling people like that. So it's pretty amazing who's right in front of your face. Have you guys ever, when you've come here, seen those pimped out Bentleys parked outside? Show me your hand if you have. Don't scratch them, because one of them is Matt's. So Matt and his dad drive those big pimped out Bentleys, which are really nice. So, the man I'm about to bring to the stage, Mr. Matt Januzek, set up his business as a startup on his own with one of his family members, and it has grown to a £20 million plus a year business. And we've pulled out all the stops to get someone of this quality to come and be interviewed, and you to be able to ask your questions on growing your business, on starting up your business, building your deal packaging business from the horse's mouth, from someone who's done it and brought in, well, 20 million a year. He's got offices in Europe, he's got offices in the US, you know, so an unbelievable achievement at a very young age. So please everyone stand up and give a huge round of applause for Mr. Matt Januzek! Okay, all right, so can we just check with Matt's mic on? Can we just have a quick say something?
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can everyone hear Matt? Yeah. Okay, so everyone, this is Matt. Matt, this is everyone.
Nice to meet you all.
So, here's how we're going to do this. I've got a few questions that I'll ask Matt, and Matt can answer based on what many of you have said you'd like to know. At any stage, if you've got a question, show us your hand. And Matt's already said he'll take any questions you've got, which I think is a great thing. So, Matt, thank you very much, first of all. When did you start Escape Fitness?
Started it in 1998. So, just kind of got to a bit of a stage in my life where I would have probably met Rob at the same state of mind a little bit earlier, actually. So I was probably not too far from his description of himself, and just really sort of got to a point where I'd partied myself out and wasted a lot of my life, and decided that I wanted to, do something, and had this sort of desire inside me that something was possible. And I think that the turning point was I used to go out clubbing in London when I was younger, and that used to be my life. I sort of met this girl, wonderful girl, and she sort of took me home. And when Rob talks about sort of being around people that inspire you, I sort of met her father, who was an entrepreneur. He was in the fashion business, and he'd done very well for himself. He was sort of born out of East End of London, and I think he was someone who sort of showed me, what was possible, because I was from Peterborough, and there wasn't really that many people around me either that sort of inspired me. My father had sort of had 4 children, worked extremely hard, but he worked for someone, and he used to work 7 days a week. And I've got 2 children, and I can't imagine what it must have been like to bring up sort of 4 children on a salary that he was on. So it was, my father really wasn't an entrepreneur, although he used to try to do lots of, make lots of things and develop businesses on his own. So I didn't really have anyone who inspired me, but the girl was Janine, and she did dump me because I was a bit of a loser. Although she did inspire me, and she sort of, I think, probably my first girl that sort of broke my heart at the time. So I think that was my.
How old were you then?
So I was probably I must have been about 19, and whilst it still took me quite a long time to actually make anything happen, I think that was probably the first turning point where I thought, I need to try and do something.
And how old were you when you set up Escape?
So I set up Escape when I was 30, and I was actually, I think the turning point for that business was I was again doing a pretty crappy job. I was earning at the time, I used to take home about £1,000 a week from what I was doing, and then in the evenings I'd top up my money as a doorman, because I was sort of used to, as I still do now, lift a lot of weights, and I thought, well, it was a nice way to kind of combine making a bit of money, meeting some girls, and sort of going out for free at the same time. So
you can't come in this club.
So I wasn't earning too much money, and I met a guy through a friend, and he sort of said, look, I've got this opportunity, do you want to come and meet me? And I met him just outside Wisbeach, which is not too far from here. And I remember it as a little pub. We sat outside, and he he told me about this business, which was a network marketing business, and it was called Amway. I don't know if you heard of Amway. Yeah, and I kind of looked at it, and I sort of thought, well, this, you know, there's something there. And he gave me this book to read, which was it was called The Magic of Thinking Big, or Think Big, or something like that.
David Schwartz, that one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's kind of I remember it's sort of red, black, and white book, and I took it home. And he said, look, just read this, and then, you know, let's come and have another chat. And I never read. I don't think I'd ever read a book at school, and it was probably the first book that I actually read from front to back. And it sort of just, you know, complete. I was reading it, and it was, you know, I never read these types of words and had this sort of inspiration. It completely changed, you know, where I was in my head at the time. So I went back to see him, and he was kind of selling me on this, you know, trying to sell vitamins or some kind of stuff at the time. And he gave me these tapes, which so I'm going back a few years. They weren't CDs or MP3s, or cassettes. And I had a Capri 1.6. It was a pretty cool car at the time. It was two-tone, light and dark grey.
You shouldn't really admit that. It was pretty cool.
And it was, I think it was a Calypso, actually. That was the model. And so I was putting these in, and when I was driving around, I was listening to these tapes, and they were kind of people like Rob, really, you know, inspiring people about how to develop their business and how to sell. And I just couldn't stop listening to these things, and I'd just drive around, you know, wherever I could, just to listen to these tapes and to be in my own zone. And so I went back to him, and you know, he sort of said, come to an event, which was like this, probably a bit bigger, and there was all these kind of people on stage, you know, shouting, putting their arms up in the air, and it's a little bit cultish, but
yeah, we know.
But I kind of thought my dad would die if he knew I was at one of these sort of places. But I was sort of half one foot in, thinking this is really cool, and on the other foot thinking this is really weird. You know, I sort of didn't know where I was. But I started, you know, step by step, things started to change. You know, I sort of took pride in, you know, how I looked, and you know, in my office, you know, I started to tidy things up, and I was on a slightly different path. And you know, in the book it kind of said, you know, don't think about trying to make massive steps and everything will change. You know, just start on the small things. You know, how you look. I think in the book it talks about the importance of, you know, getting a decent suit and just changing your attitude. So I continued to went to a few of the events, but I kind of thought that he was telling me how big this company was, this Amway company, and how many billions it was worth. And something in my mind kind of said, well, I'm really excited about the opportunity of making money, but I want to be Amway. You know, I want to be that company. I don't kind of want to work for that company. And it was something, you know, it always sort of played in my mind, you know, do I really want to be building this business for this big company that's really successful, or you know, can I do it myself? And I just had this sort of feeling inside that, you know, I could do that myself. I could be the company that other people work for. And I think that's really what sort of took me on the road to sort of say, you know, I'm gonna start my own business. And you know, thinking back to what I did, and sort of when I tour people around the you know, warehouse and factory, people are quite amazed, and it sort of scares me to think, like, I could never imagine in my mind where I was then mentally and what I had around me to where I am now. I couldn't have imagined it. It just wouldn't have been possible. And because at the time I was, you know, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any money, and I'd gone to lots of seminars and heard people about success. But I thought, well, there must be something different about them. Maybe they've had, you know, a good upbringing, or maybe they've had a bad upbringing, because, you know, these people with bad upbringing seem to do really, really well in all these stories. Or maybe they'd had someone who knew something, and there was always something. I thought, well, yeah, because, you know, their parents left them when they were a child, that's why they're successful. But it just didn't ever sink to me, and so we started with no money. My parents had this little sort of small house, probably 20 minutes up the road, and I just had an idea, and I had a huge amount of passion and drive to say, look, somehow I'm going to make this work. And I think we had a couple of £1,000 that we used to sort of buy a little bit of stock and do a couple of adverts. And we managed to use, I think in this business they talk about other people's money, but we managed to use some credit from suppliers to be able to sort of cash flow us between, you know, people paying us and us paying them. And somehow, we managed to kind of make a business start, and we went from me, my dad. My mum used to sort of answer the phone, you know, while she was washing the dishes and making dinner, you know, sort of run into the kitchen when the phone rang. And I was doing another job at the time, and I sort of had another phone where I'd nip out and pick it up, and then my sister helped. She was a hairdresser and sort of beautician, so she helped out in the part-time. And it just kind of, it just sort of grew from there. So I think whilst it's extremely difficult to make it happen, it is possible for anybody. And you know, I've certainly proved that to myself and to also a lot of people around me.
So that was question 1 of 24. No, it's good. He's found this useful so far, by the way. So, show me, Anne, if you can see a lot of similarities in Matt's story to many other successful people. I mean, it's like he's saying the same story that we all say, which hopefully should be really inspirational to you if you can relate to anything. So, you've told us where you were and what you started. So, how many staff do you have now at Escape across the world?
We're around about 150 people that we work employed fully by us, yeah.
Okay, and how many countries do you work out of, or different cities?
So we started in Yaxley, just up the road, parents' house, and we went from there to a little sort of terraced house in the centre of Peterborough. We moved out from there, and it was a big stretch, but we bought this building across the road, and I remember walking in there thinking, shit, how are we going to pay for this? And there was all these just empty desks. There was nothing in there. There was just me, I think my dad and a couple of other. We had an accountant in there, and that was about it. But we quite quickly filled that up. We took some warehouse space on as we grew, and we managed to establish ourselves in the UK as a pretty reasonable player in the UK market. We then decided to open up in Poland because my father he had Polish family going back, and he had this sort of dream to do some sort of business in Poland. So we decided to open up a business in Poland, which is amazingly difficult because there's so much red tape and paperwork, everything from how you finance and pay people. But somehow, again, we managed to employ people, open a warehouse, start selling and marketing in a completely different country. I would say we had an advantage because my dad spoke a bit of Polish. But it was kind of Polish that he learned when he was under 5, and then he had to sort of develop all of the business work. So he was the main contact to the country. So again, looking back, you think, well, if we had to do it now, it would have seemed such a difficult thing. But when you do small things at a time and you, I suppose, blindly say I'm going to do it, it tends to work itself out. So after that, we sort of saw Germany as being one of the biggest markets in our business, which is sort of health and fitness. We saw Germany as being a big opportunity. There's a lot of people, affluent, without doing any kind of market research or sort of thinking about what it was like to open a business in Germany. We said, well, let's do a business in Germany. And so we did, and along the way, there was loads of things that we didn't think through, and it was far more difficult. And Germans have a thing about buying from Germans. When you're an English company trying to sell things that they're making in the country, it doesn't always go down that well. It's like, well, why are we importing this stuff from England, buying from a guy who doesn't even speak German? Why don't we buy from German people? So there's a lot of barriers, but again, we were committed to go into the country.
So Matt, if you'd known that in advance, might that have stopped you setting up Germany?
I think we probably did know it, but I think we just didn't really. I think it's about, if you have a goal, and sometimes they could be stupid goals, so you've got to be a little bit sensible. But you just are blinkered and you say, I'm going to make it happen no matter what. And I think that's what we had, and we did, and we continued to do it. And we had a huge amount of ups and downs, and we lost a huge amount of money, and it took us several years to really work it out. But that was our goal. And as my dad says, the goal is never from here to there in a straight line. I sort of heard Rob sort of mentioning similar things earlier. Sometimes you have to go all the way over here, and then maybe back over here, and then maybe back to the beginning again before you get to where you're going. But if that's what you want to do, then you just have to continue and be persistent, and you can make it happen. So Germany was extremely tough, but it was a great learning experience. And And then the third country we went into was the US, which is the biggest fitness market in the world. And I remember, always when I started the business, I thought, this would be a dream to have a company in the US. But it seemed such a huge goal that I couldn't imagine how we could make it happen. But I kind of sort of played a trick on, because my father's my business partner, and I sort of played a little bit of a trick on him. I met a guy who an English guy who got a job out there, and I sat down with him one day and I said, what do you think about us doing a business over here, and is it possible, could you help us out? And he kind of roughly said, well, yeah, maybe it's possible. The fact is that the American market's known for inventing fitness. They've got all of the biggest suppliers over there. All the innovation comes out of the US. So, what's a company from Peterborough ever going to do in the US, if you think about it? Considering we're a relatively small business. But I came back to my dad and I said, I spoke to Ken, and Ken said that we do really, really well out here. He said he can help us out. He said, it's not going to be a problem, and we should come out here and set a business. So my dad kind of believed in me a lot, and he said, okay. So we sort of looked at the business strategy and we said, right, we're going to go and open up in the US. And kind of before I knew it, we were on this journey, and everybody was behind us, and we told the banks, and that was it. And so it was a little bit of a sort of, it was almost like a little bit of a dream that I put out there and said, well, look, let's just do this. And we're operating. We're in Columbus, Ohio, and we've got a small team. We're just getting started, but we've won some pretty big contracts. We've got a very good product, which helps, but we're making inroads, and we're growing the business out there. So again, it's would it make sense if I sat down in front of any bank manager and accountant, which we had? They would just say, your chances of success are probably, about 1%, if that, because everything's against you, or all of the odds are really against you. But if you believe in yourself, if you think you've got a good product, if you think you've got something different, and you're crazy enough to make it happen, then it's possible. We prove that.
Thank you, Matt. So, got a few more questions here, but take a break. A couple of questions from you. Anyone got any questions you'd like to ask Matt, how he went from 0 to over £20 million a year in his business? So we'll go with Charlie. Charlie, what's your name?
Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. So your question for Matt?
A couple of questions. One is, what is your business?
Okay, yeah.
We'll do that one quickly.
Secondly, is there a particular mindset or sort of way of thinking that's specifically helped you grow the business to be successful?
Yeah, both good questions, and I should have mentioned that from the beginning. So we're in the business of making people look good, feel better, live longer. We work in health and fitness. We work with a lot of the biggest sort of health and fitness chains across the world. So you'll see our products in David Lloyd, Virgin Active, Fitness First. So any large successful fitness chain we're in, and we provide them with equipment and also training on how to use that equipment. So that's more or less what we do. The mindset thing's really a key thing, and it's something that's always been part of what I've done from the very beginning. Because I think, I never really had a huge belief in myself throughout this whole period. And when you're in business, you're constantly questioning yourself, is this the right thing? Because it's quite a lonely job as an entrepreneur. And it's not the sort of thing that you really want to share with your wife to let her know really what's going on. If sometimes she knew, you'd think, well, I'm going to panic her, and then she's going to panic me, and it's going to be crazy. So I tend to sort of keep a lot of those things to myself. And it's really about sort of meeting people like Rob. Like we've sort of both been through sort of ups and downs in our business, and sometimes it's good to know that other people have been through that, because it's not all fantastic, and I've never met anyone who's just had this great success story. It's always up and down, and we've been through, probably end of last year up until probably a few months ago. We had a really tough stage in our business, and I sort of diarised everything, what I was thinking at the time, and you really have to kind of find a way of snapping yourself out of it, giving yourself a bit of talking to. And if you look in my car or even on my phone, I've always got some inspirational materials that I'm reading.
Have you got Be Your Own Bank by Rob Moore? Right. 99 quid at this event. Yeah, that went down well, didn't it?
you've got to find what works for you, and there's certain people that for me inspire me, and when I'm down I kind of listen to them, and it's that sort of kick up the backside. I don't have a mentor at the moment, but I do get a lot of when I meet with Rob, and I try and find people that are going to be inspirational for me.
We're both actually trying to find someone in the States, aren't we, who could kind of fill that void for us. Because obviously you always want a bigger mentor at a higher level than you.
Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the most difficult things in business is the mindset, and it's just finding the support team which you guys have got here, and then stuff that you can do when you're on your own at home or whatever. And like Rob said, when you're in the car and you're thinking about turning around, that's when you want to stick something in your CD or MP3 as they have, and just make sure you kind of you re-engage with it. So I don't know whether does that answer your question.
Charlie, I think something I picked up from that, which I actually experienced quite recently, and we kind of talked about it in the first session, is that when the first time Matt and I went out for dinner at Carluccio's, we were having quite a shit time in our business, and it was just after the Super Conference, our biggest one, and it should have been our best time of our business, but the Super Conference just threw us cost after cost after cost after cost after cost after cost. I think it ended up costing us about 350 grand, and it really hit our cash flow hard. And it was, even though people tell you about cash flow in business is really important, you don't really know what that means until you look at your profit and loss and it looks good, but you've got no fucking money in the bank, and you work out, how does that work out? And we were down probably to our last 50 grand, which at the time was probably only 6 weeks, 8 weeks running costs, maybe 12 weeks if we'd have thinned. And for us, that was a scary time. And the thing that John DeMartini's really taught me, because he's been one of my mentors, because he's just like at the God level of like Tony Robbins above, is that it will be different tomorrow. And if, no matter how bad you think it is today, you get up the next day and it's different tomorrow. And sometimes if you had a really shit day, all you have to do is get to bed and go to sleep, because you wake up the next day and it's not yesterday. And the other side of that is, when you think you're ruling the world, tomorrow can show you ain't as good as you think you are. So it works in both instances. And between us, we were always dropping CDs and recommendations in the car, and if you put Neville Wright here, between us we must have done 200,000 hours worth of personal development audio. Alright, Neville's 60 odd, so he's done 150,000 hours of them. So the first thing is just understanding that if it's not going where you want, tomorrow will be different. Because no matter how much personal development you do, when things are really not going your way, it's still a challenge to coach yourself on all the things you know. And then the next thing is, I think it's really important, and Matt kind of said it, but I just want to add to it, is that have something in your car that when you're feeling shit, you put on, and it changes it like that. So I was listening to an audio recently called The Happiness Advantage. It's from a guy from Harvard who studied a load of sort of how to be happy and be successful. Or I listened to Zig Ziglar, and especially raising positive kids in a negative world. And just putting them on, no matter what state you're in, make you feel amazing. Because they're those kind of audios. Or you could, for example, go the other way around and listen to Christopher Reeves or Gerald Ratner's autobiographies. Because that's the other way around. I don't really think my life's that bad. I can walk, and blah, blah, blah. So if they're in the car, in the glove box, or wherever, you can stick them straight on. Because it's the guy giving you a dose of what you already know. And sometimes when you feel shit, sod down, I'm going to listen to death metal. I actually am into death metal, it's very bad. And if I'm not feeling very good, I'll sod this audio bollocks. I'm going to put music back on, but that compounds it. So you just have to make it, okay, yeah, back on the audio.
And two other things just to build on that. I kind of have a bit of a habit where Monday to Friday is kind of like where I'm working, and in the car I'll only have some sort of positive or business type of CDs, and then on a weekend that's kind of my day off, and then I'll crank the music up and just have music. So it's a good way, because there's a bit of discipline to say, well, this is what I'm going to listen to this week, and that's wherever I'm travelling around. And it's amazing how many hours you sit in the car, you know, going up to the shops and that sort of thing. And it's just that little boost that just kind of keeps the right things in the front of your mind. And then the other thing I'd highly recommend, not just because it's my business, but you know, sometimes when things are shit and you're not feeling great, is you know, a basic level is go and have a walk, because you know, you walk for 15 or 20 minutes, you know, in one direction, and you start, your brain starts working, your blood starts flowing, and you know, a lot of sort of, you know, positive kind of stuff happens to your body. You're releasing endorphins, and all of a sudden things look a lot better. You breathe again, because a lot of times when you're stressed and it's not going right, you know, your posture's down, you're not breathing fully. So just to get up and to walk, you know, I would recommend that when stuff's not quite right. And then, you know, to notch that up a little bit further, you can, you know, it's good to try and get some kind of workout, and it doesn't have to be lifting weights or whatever, but, you know, I'd recommend that. Because you know, when things are really tough, if I go in the gym, I come out and the whole world looks completely different. So I'd encourage something, even if it's just going for a good walk for 20 minutes.
Cool. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, your name, sir?
Jean-Marc.
Hi, Jean-Marc.
Hi there. I started my own business, same as you, but obviously it's not to 20 million yet.
I like that.
We're growing every year at 20-25%, but I can return something which is about 1.5 million now to 3 million or 5 million.
Right. So, sorry, I didn't...
How quick can you do it?
Oh, how quick can you do it?
And how have you done it? Is it progressive, or is it just people? Or?
It depends, and there's kind of good growth and bad growth, and we've tried both. Turnover is great, but I don't have to tell you, but you need to be making profit, and if you're investing, then your profits are going to be different. So it's a difficult one to answer.
What's the rough average profit margin you're going for?
We look around about sort of 8 to 10%, which is higher than our industry average, and one of the things, just to sort of, I'll come around to answer your question, but one of the things that I found is really key is to, you know, we've always focused on innovation, or trying to find some way to separate us from everyone else that's out there. So I don't know about your industry, and I don't know what's average or what's health and fitness, yeah.
It's gymnastics and cheerleading.
Okay, so it's a really difficult one to say what's good. You'd probably be able to answer that better than I would, but all I would say is it's about being able to do the best you can be, and to sort of ideally be doing, you know, finding ways to outsmart your competitors, and we've always done that through innovation. Is trying to find some way to differentiate what we're doing from everybody else, and there's, you know, that could be down to the way you innovate your service. It could be the way you answer your phone. It could be the way you market yourself. But you know, we always strive to say, you know, well, how can we do things differently? And that's, I guess, helped us grow. But you know, we've gone up and we've gone down, and we've gone back up again, and we've had sort of 3 or 4 years of growth. So you know, that's business. You know.
Do you set your 3, 5, 10-year plans and targets? So let's say you said, you know, you want to go from 1 million, 1.5 million to 3 million to 5 million. Is that set down in stone, written down in a spreadsheet, projected forward? Okay, so that's the first thing, because it's uncanny how you get what you shoot for. And that's actually really easy. This is weird, but there's a house on Thorpe Road. You might know it, Matt. It's got a big flagpole outside. It's the only one on Thorpe Road with a massive flagpole, huge setback off the road. And probably 10 years ago, when I didn't have any money, I saw that and I thought, I want a house with a fucking flagpole. And I thought, yeah, it just put some tannoys on the front, and it just, God save the Queen when you're pulling your flag up. And I thought, I want that house. And then about 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, when we just got started in business, I set a goal on my phone to buy that house. And it was way not even close out of my league. And then in the last sort of 3 years, when I moved out of a previous house to a new one, I only wanted to rent for 6 months to find a house. And we've been renting for 3 years. It's actually been a good time to rent. But we've been renting for 3 years, haven't been able to find anything. And I've viewed probably nearly every single house that's been on the market around sort of Thorpe Road and Longthorpe and seen a bit of anything and everything, and the perfect house ended up being that house. And the guy who owns it, I didn't even know, was my old hairdresser's dad. My old hairdresser's dad, I'd done some business coaching for. So I just bought his house. And like, it's, you know, you can think that's a bit ethereal and a bit weird. We're literally just about to exchange, got consent to let yesterday, final search, will be in 10 days, 2 weeks. It's a 4-storey house, it's 4,000 square foot, it's just like amazing. And you can see it and think that's a bit weird, you know, that's serendipitous or whatever, but I don't really think that. I remember when I did Tony Robbins CDs, and the first time you ever do Tony Robbins CDs, you turn into a bit of a weirdo. And so I got my exercise bike in the house, and I was riding my exercise bike, and I was shouting out at the top of my voice, I'm glad this is in my house, every day in every way I'm getting stronger and stronger, yes! Because that's what it makes you do, because that's Tony. And you all know that you don't want to do that in front of people. So I was doing that. And when I was doing that, he'd say you incant and imagine all your goals. And I was incanting and imagining a Nissan 350Z with orange leather. Now, no car ever did orange leather, and I don't even know why I wanted orange leather, but I knew when I saw that 350Z for the first time, because that was the first ever really amazing car I had back then, that was what I wanted. Turns out they did do it in orange leather. Turns out I bought one. Then I saw the new GTR, and Mark and I used to go running together years ago, and there was one parked on down Manor Avenue. And we used to run round it, and I used to stop every time we were running. Mark used to just think I was unfit. And I'd look at the GTR, and in my mind I'd go, I'm going to have one of them, And at the time, you could hardly get them, the price was ridiculous, all that kind of thing, and obviously that's one of the cars I bought. And I just want to give you a couple of examples, because when you state what you want and you put it in your goals and you read it and you repeat it, I've had proof in my life that it happens. So that's one thing. And then I jump on what Matt said, innovation. We've grown more than 50% a year, every year for 7, 8 years. Now it's easy in the first few years when you're small, because 50% of not a lot is not a lot. But obviously when you're 2, 3, 4, 5 million, it's hard. Last year we were 35%, so that was the only one year we weren't 50%. But this year we're 109% up year on year, which is much harder. And every year we've done some kind of major innovation, which has helped us. So when we did the Super Conference, that was our major innovation in the industry, I suppose, and that ramped up our turnover then and profit. And then when Super Conferences got to the point where costs spiralled, I did this thing where at the Super Conference I gave everyone a free joint venture day with the Super Conference. And after the Super Conference I probably did 2 a week JV days for the next 3 to 6 months. You all know the JVs, you've been to them. And so the Super Conference itself wasn't really that much of a profit generating exercise, but this free ticket with the Super Conference for months, people coming up, I must have got 80 or 90 new VIPs from that. So that was our innovation. The last year of the Super Conference, it was hard. It hit our cash flow really hard. And as much as I didn't want to make the choice, I had to as well. Quite a few of our staff left the day after because it hurt, because it was so hard to manage. But then we set up PPN. And PPN was the innovation for us to grow beyond Super Conference. Now I think we have 25, 26 PPNs. We have some great, amazing people in the room that we're partners with. So I think one innovation a year, I think you easily get 50% growth. Cool, Kevin, what's your name?
Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
What are the biggest challenges?
Oh, it's funny there, this question. What are your 3 biggest challenges?
Scaling up the businesses. I don't mind which of you.
Oh, well, Matt first. You're right if I get a water and leave you with them.
Yeah.
An hour.
One of the big challenges is getting the right people, I would say, building a team. We started and I recruited my brother, sister, wife. We were for a while more family than non-family. So it was easy because you've got a common goal and some common values that bind you together. When you have to then build a team, it's very easy to, sorry, not very easy, very difficult to find the right type of people that have those same goals and aligning everybody behind you and motivating them. It was even more difficult when we were hiring people from different countries with different backgrounds and a whole, new, different approach on life. So I think the biggest one is getting the right people, and then supporting the right people and motivating them to do what you want them to do when they don't actually, in a lot of cases, have a share in the business. So I'd say that's probably my biggest one. The second one, in growth, is just finding the best way to fund and finance the business. Banks, as my father says, they'll sell you the products that they have available. They won't tend to bespoke something that fits your business. So if they've got 5 products, then they'll tell you that one of those 5 products is right for your business, and it isn't always right for your business. I remember reading a book about Richard Branson when he was with Coots and they pulled the plug on him and his business almost folded. We've been in a similar position where we've been with a bank for a long time, having a really difficult time. And the funny thing is that banks are always there for you when you're making money, when you don't really need them, and when you do need them and you're not making money, they're gone. They're not prepared to help you. So I think it's you guys obviously are going to be reliant on funding your businesses as well. So it's not always taking the first answer. There's many different ways to do it, and you've just got to be creative and not necessarily take what the banks tell you is right for you. So we've shopped around, we've found some other solutions, and as you're growing your business, you need different things at different parts. So I would say, to answer your question, it's getting the right people and building the team, and then getting the right type of finance and support with your business. Because you can be making great profits, but if you have, as Rob says, if you haven't got the cash flow, which happens in a lot of cases, then you haven't got a business. So.
I'd say the one biggest challenge is enjoying the challenges, because there's not a day that goes by at Progressive where something happens that you didn't want to happen yesterday. You get in and there's always something, always, regardless. And at the time, no matter how much personal development you've done or what you know, it pisses you off and you wish it wouldn't happen. But once you've had a quick word with yourself, if you're able to go, this is what makes great people great, this is what makes great people grow, blah, 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 then that's the biggest thing. Because there are always challenges, and there's no necessarily one way to deal with all challenges other than to go, I'm going to beat this challenge. And in every challenge I have all of the emotions. Like immediately, why me? Not fair. Pissed off. Why now? That's a big one. Shit timing. Don't you know I'm busy? Don't you know who I am? All that bollocks. And then you think, right, I'm an entrepreneur. Get stuck in. What's the problem? In. Get your team. Let's sort it out. What do we need to do? And then you get a little bit of a buzz. It's like, bang, yeah, all right, yeah, let's change it. Let's have a brainstorm meeting. We have marketing challenges all the time. That launch didn't go very well. Right, let's all get in. We have a 2-hour riot with all of our marketing team. We end up creating a brand new, better strategy. And some of the very best things we've ever done have been from mistakes. So I'd say that. I'd say embracing every challenge, because many things we've done well have been because before we did something really stupid. That one, we sent out an email to the whole database giving them the logistics of the deal packaging event. Now, when you do exclusion or inclusion on our database, you do one or two things. You include all or exclude all. We have at the time we were doing this, we had 120,000 people on our database. And the person who sent the email, instead of excluding everyone and just including the 45 people who'd been booked on deal packaging, they did the exact opposite. So not only did 119,900 odd get the freaking wrong email, the ones that should have got it didn't. Thank you for laughing at our pain. About 5 or 6 people signed up for the deal packaging course off that email, because they're like, what's deal packaging? Deal packaging course? Yeah, all right, I'll join that. So if you ever get a wrong email booked on a course you haven't booked on, that's probably a little selling technique. But the point is, there was some good that came of it. Cool. All right, so that was the challenges question done. So, Alex, what's your name?
Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Awesome story. Thanks so much for sharing it. Can you talk me through your recruitment process? How you find the best talent, and then how you interview them and choose them for the right people, and what books you'd recommend in terms of management of those people?
Very good question. What we decided to do was, as we grew, we were doing a lot of recruitment ourselves, and we were sort of putting people who didn't really have a good HR background in the position, and we came unstuck a lot, because particularly in the UK and also in Germany, there's a lot of strange rules, and if even if you don't bring the right person in the business, it's very difficult to transition them out, and we got caught quite a few times on that. So one of the things I would suggest is get some really good advice on the HR side, so what you can and can't do legally. And there's different ways to do that, from hiring a professional, which we ended up doing as we got bigger, to getting an independent company that you can use to give you that sort of advice for a small amount of like a monthly retainer fee or something. So I'd certainly recommend getting advice, because the law changes all of the time, and it's very difficult for you as an entrepreneur to be on top of all of those changes anyway. So get some good external advice.
Can I just jump on that and say how? When we first got HR advice, which was a really good thing to do, and I'll tell you why we went to get HR advice, because normally you either listen to these things and then don't do them, but then you do them when you're forced to do them, when something major goes wrong, and then you wish you'd done them when you were told. And that was us with HR. So we went to a local business club, and we met a guy called Trevor Richards, who had been big in HR his life, and then sort of in his 40s, he set up his own little business, and you'd pay him, I think, £30 a month, and you could speak to him on the phone, he'd give you advice. And that was great, because not only was it not a lot of money, because you don't want to have to hire someone, because if you hire someone full-time in HR, that'd be 45 grand plus a year in Peterborough. Also, it was great, because you could phone him up and say, okay, so what's the law? And he'd go blah, blah, blah. And then you could say, what happens in reality most of the time? And then he'd go blah, blah, blah. And it's always something different. Whereas you get a lot of them who are from the law firms, just about the law, it's not helpful. So that really helped us. So you probably find someone like that at a business club.
Is he still going?
No, he retired, which was a nightmare, because we then got a big HR company, paying them a load more money, and what do? Spout us a load of, vanilla legal advice. Because you've had a few big issues, haven't you, with people and
we've been to tribunals, and fortunately we'd had advice and had people in the business, and we've done it the right way. But there are examples where people lose tens of thousands of pounds if they get it wrong. Recommend finding somebody. And I don't know anyone I could recommend, but
if you probably find someone at your local business club. That's where we found ours.
Yeah.
We borrowed a contract off an estate agent to form our first contract, which I think was a really good move, because they're quite similar to us in our world. And I remember Alex and Simon both sort of bragging that they never had a contract with their estate agents. And they were going to be leaving, and they were going to be nicking all the contacts, and they were going to be coming to work for us. So Mark was like, right, better fucking get one then. So Mark went to the same estate agent, a different estate agent in Peterborough, who had a good tight contract, who we knew quite well, and they just gave us a copy of their contract. And we just fiddled with it a bit. And, it's really important. And when we started, we didn't really have anything like that. But Mark got that, and just signing a contract obviously makes someone a little bit more... it's just the proper way to do it, isn't it? And as you grow, I think you'll find your way. I mean, we could speak to you for about 5 hours on recruitment and hiring process and contract and legals, but it's probably the best thing to do. Borrow a contract off an estate agent. Make sure there's a non-compete clause in it. We first made it 5 years, and then we gave it to a lawyer and they laughed at us. Then we made it a year, and they said, yeah, okay, but if you make it 6 months, it probably will hold up in court. But you want it to be like forever, but you can't. So we've got a 6 month, can't buy properties in our area without permission. That would hold up in court, and that's the biggest protection in our world we have, because you're going to teach people how to buy property when they work for you. So you want that in it. But again, we could talk for hours about that. The thing we did when we started is we hired a load of entrepreneurs just like us. Because you often hire Because you look at everyone else who's not like you and you don't like them. And you look at everyone who's you and you're like, yeah, I was like that a few years ago. So there was me, Mark, Alex, Simon, we were all like, look at us, entrepreneurs. A guy called Dave, who was really entrepreneurial, Dan, James. And if you've got 7 or 8 people in your business and they're all entrepreneurs like you, that is a nightmare. And we couldn't control them. And then they all left and set up Progressing Property. Only 4 of them together, but one of them masterminded it and got them all out. So I would say, know the type of person you want for that type of role and who that type needs to be. You recommended me, didn't you, a little way that you can personality profile. What was that?
Yeah, there's a few companies out there. Like we use, there's an American company that does a kind of psychometric profile, and they have a very low cost version. I'll try and find the details and let Rob know. But there's a low cost version of about $100, and they can go through a profile. And we hire a lot of salespeople, which are generally quite expensive. And if you get it wrong, you can lose a huge amount of money. So we really focus on getting good profiling of salespeople, and this company will, it's just an online test. They send you back the results. It gives you a red, amber, green, and you kind of, if you're in the red and amber, then you should really proceed with caution. If it's green, then obviously you do your own process, and hopefully that sort of gives you a...
That's when you obviously don't want to be chucking $100 at everyone who comes in the door. That's at the last few...
Oh, believe you me, it's worth $100.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. James Kahn, when I got mentored...
I mean, you get 50 responses. You don't want to be spending $100 each.
For your CVs,
the last 5,
no. You need your own. I guess when you get your CVs, then you need a way to bring those down. And
I only do it with people you actually interview.
Yeah.
You might be surprised. Sometimes you won't get that many CVs. So, but James Kahn, who, as you know, mentored me, he said, Rob, new staff will cost you 20 to 25 grand a year. And I didn't believe him. I thought, what a load of bollocks, because that's not even the salary where we are, and for many people. He is bloody right, and obviously you know why he was. That's what it will cost you with staff turnover. Training them up again, loss of business. If you lose a salesperson, you lose all that business going forward, and then you've got to train up the next person, and then if they leave after 3 or 4 months. And by the way, just to check in, who's finding this useful so far? And it's quite a long session. I was thinking of getting you to network and have a little break, but we're right to go through to lunch.
Yeah.
This bit is the most important bit, because all of you should be hiring people. So if you did days and think this isn't relevant for me, this is the most relevant for you. But I've forgotten what I was saying.
25 grand a year.
Yeah, that's what it will cost. So it is worth getting it right up front. So know the type of person you want for the role. You will want some entrepreneurial types. For example, if they're in sales and marketing. But you just got to accept you'll probably lose them after 2 or 3 years. I thought it was great what Alex and Simon did with us, and we fell out and we made up pretty quickly, because you're obviously not going to be happy when they leave, especially when they'll start completely ignoring your compete clauses. But yeah, you need to know the type of person.
And any books you guys have read that you'd recommend?
Yes. How to Hire the Next Steve Jobs by Nolan Bushnell. Awesome. The mistake I made for years when hiring people and interviewing them, I'd say something like, do you work weekends? They go, yeah. Of course they'd say that. They want a job. And then they get there, they do 1 weekend out of 9, and they hand their notice in. Some of us experienced that. So the thing you can't do in an interview is ask them the question that leads them to the answer. So you say to them, how many bits of chewing gum do you think are under that table? And obviously they'll be like, But if you're looking for a creative person, they say, well, I don't know, because I can't see. Not tired. They go, well, there's 80 people in the room, probably 20% of them will have chewing gum. But they're VIPs, so they're not going to stick chewing gum under your table. Plus there's a tablecloth there, so I'd say only 3. Hire it. And that book taught me all the loads of questions like that, where you get out of them the answer you want, but you're leading them down another road with the questions.
Thinking of having children.
We can't talk about things like that, can we? Yeah. But yeah, things like that. You know, what do you do on your weekends? Oh, well, you know, play football, go on holiday, you know, do this, do that, blah, 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 blah. And if you're hiring them in events and you want to do weekends, you know they don't do it, for example.
Thank you, guys.
No problem.
That was a great book recommendation. Please, would you pass us one or two others that you think would...
Oh, you've listened to that one, have you?
No, that's...
Oh, you just want more?
Please.
Yeah. Have you got any?
The one I'm listening to at the moment is, and I'm not sure whether it's, well, yeah, I think it is relevant to what you guys are doing. It's called Play to Win, and I've listened to that. I'm kind of on my third time reading it at the moment, and it kind of talks about strategy and what Rob was mentioning earlier about you know, sticking with something is relevant to this book, because I think everybody's going to have different skills and different talents, and as Rob said, you know, if you don't think you're doing well at something and then you see someone who's being really successful and then you jump onto that opportunity and move on, you know, there might be reasons why he's or she's particularly successful in that area. What he talks about in Play to Win is really understanding you know, where you're able to, instead of just playing to play, is, you know, what type of business can you go where you're going to play to win, and go into the game aiming to win. Don't go into
that one. Or
I'll get you the details, and you can find them. But it's really good, because a lot of people, myself included, you kind of think about business strategy and you have a business plan. But even the people that work for us, it's very difficult to get them to think strategically. Sales guys, you know, they kind of go off in all different directions, and Keith Cunningham calls them shiny pennies, and you'll sort of, you know, be looking at every little shiny penny and run after it, and you won't ever really get any traction. So it's understanding, you know, what your strengths are, you know, what's the playing field that you're going to play, and how are you going to win, and have you got the resources to win. If you're not, then you should really consider whether that's where you want to be. So I'd certainly recommend that. That's a great book. And then the other one I'd recommend, he's got a few, but it's called Made to Stick, by, I think it's Chip and Dan Heath. They've got a few books, but you know, that really talks from a sales and marketing perspective. That's really how to get a message out into the market, and the psychology behind making those messages stick with the people that you're working with. So I think those are two pretty good books.
John DeMartini I'd really recommend, and it's actually not, hasn't got a recruitment or HR book, but all of his work, whether it's he does healing, he does helping raise good kids, he does business, he does making money, all of his work is on values, what's most important to someone in their life. So after listening to John DeMartini's work, in all interviews, I'll ask someone, what's most important to you in your life? Not career, but what's most important to you in your life? And I'm surprised they don't actually get very... A, they're not surprised by that, and B, they don't really know what I'm doing. They just reel it off. Oh yeah, well, you know, I love travel, I love fishing, I love golf, I love going out, I love blah, I love blah, I love blah. And you're waiting for career. And if it ain't in number 3 to 5, you're not hired, because you know what'll happen when they come and work with you. So I want people whose career is in the top 3. Who's hungry, who wants to forge a career, or if success or being recognised or making money is in the top 3, you know you're going to be able to feed that. So that really helps. Yes, Rob. What's your name, Rob?
Hi, I'm Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Employing people versus outsourcing. Outsourcing seems pretty popular, as people talking about it at the moment. What's your point of view, both of you, managing people you're outsourcing to versus actually employing?
When we started, we outsourced because it was an easy way to get. It's an easy way to grow, and you can manage your cash fairly. You know, you have a lot more control over the cash and that sort of thing. But for what we do, we're creating a brand, and I think depending on the type of business you're in, I think it's quite difficult in customer-facing roles to outsource, and we generally have never done it. I think there's certain support roles, so we're IP and contracts is really key to our business, so we'll have very good strategic partners that provide those types of services for us. I think the advice I give you on you know, what to do with an outsourced company is spend a lot of time really understanding who they are and, as Rob says, what their values are and whether they can dovetail into your business and whether they're prepared to dovetail into your business and whether you've got confidence that they're not going to use you as a stepping stone to get amongst your competitors or anyone else. So I think they can both work, but from my own learning is anything customer facing is you want control over that totally. You don't want to be, that's what really, that's the value in the business. And then the behind the scenes people is just kind of really, having an extremely strong bond and relationship with them.
I'd say I'm 90 to 95% on people and 5 to 10% on outsourcing. We have used outsourcers, and I think outsourcers are good for tasks. Just do a banner, code the site, do a pay button, blah, blah. Many people have read, for example, the 4-Hour Work Week, or they've got into this, hey, I'm going to outsource my life. How many people who run a business, 10, 20, 50, 100 or 200 million or a billion or 5 billion or 10 billion, have no staff? None of them. And I think it's actually quite a load of bollocks, being quite honest. I've never met anyone who had a business of 7 figures who had no staff. Never. If I did, and I read that book and I was like, man, that's exciting. And but then I've never met any business owner who hasn't got staff. How can you give the vision of your company and how you're going to change the world and the dent you're going to put in the universe in your office meeting if they're in Outer Mongolia? And, also, when people work at home, they don't work. They're at home. And it's so... we've had quite a lot of roles that we've outsourced, our affiliate manager or this or that. They don't get the vision, they don't buy in, they feel excluded, and they just don't really deliver, in our experience. Even worse, in our experience, is consultants. They'll come in and they'll make a nice plan and they'll want a ridiculous amount of money and they won't do any work and there'll be no measurables. Now, if you are a consultant in this room, I'm sure you're one of the different ones. But that's our experience. And I hate to be a little bit like stereotypical, but for us, I've got 6 people in my marketing team. You can't outsource that. You can't outsource that they buy into progressive, innovative, personal, and our brainstorming meetings when we're fighting and arguing with each other. Amy's just started. She looked shocked. I pulled her into a meeting. She said, Rob, Damien told you to fuck off. You're the boss. I want him to. I want him to get passionate about what he believes in his marketing. If I'm disagreeing with him, I want him to sell it to me. I want him to, love and have passion for what he does. You can't get that in outsourcers, in my experience. But get him to do loads of little jobs to free up your time so you can hire your first person. Cool. Yes, what's your name, sir?
Richard.
Hi, Richard.
I'm trying to drill down a bit further into that one about if you're hiring people, or it could be family or maybe some friends or former friends.
Yeah, family could turn into former friends.
How do you get them to share the same vision, go in the same direction? So, putting stripy shirts on them and changing in the morning or getting them to tell you to fuck off, that's not necessarily still going to line them up. And is it like you need to get them in a profit sharing or some kind of incentive scheme, or what kind of things work best for that?
It's a difficult one. We've tried we've tried both. We've tried giving people profit share, and it's actually done the opposite, where they've like, oh well, now I'm a profit share and I'm going to tell everybody else what to do. And we've had
Quickly jump in there. If you did profit share, have them that they have to give the shares back when they leave. We made that mistake of not doing that. You can have a clause which is like someone can have a share in the business, but they have to give them back when they leave.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that retains them, and you don't want to just get this default share. Imagine having 1 or 5% of a £20 million business, and then saying thanks for that. I'm leaving. I want to keep that share. So that's one way to protect yourself.
Yeah, get good legal advice when you go into it. So if you do give any shares or whatever, get good legal advice. we took that out, and it's protected us when, because, sometimes that person's not right, and then you need to move them out of the business, and if you've got a good agreement, it makes it easier. But
Warren Buffett hates it. Warren Buffett hates it. He says, pay him. Hates giving shares away. It's not right or wrong, because if you look at Bill Gates, he did the opposite, and he made a load of his team millionaires, didn't he?
But how to get them motivated? I've found it's been difficult, particularly when you have people like we have to have people that work at home because we've got an office in Asia and we've got salespeople that are just field sales and they're all over the place. So it's just spending time with them, supporting them, kind of like what Rob's doing to you guys is making them feel as though they're partners, making them feel as though they're developing and growing. And it's just investing that time with them. One of the guys who used to coach me, when he was looking at my diary when he first came, he said, "How much time are you spending with your key people?" And it was very little, because I thought, well, they're great people, they shouldn't need to be managed and supported by me. And he encouraged to make sure that I had some time in the diary where it was just their time, and I really invested in them and keeping them on track and keeping them moving. I don't know, again, whether we found the right mix, but I think you've just got to take good advice and invest your time in the people to share your vision as much as you can.
Vision and values are the two things I'd say. Because if someone buys into your vision, they'll come along for the ride, they'll be dragged along by you, and they'll go through the thick and the thins. What Trina there, for example, she's been through thick and thin, through knee operations and doing loads of events, which I'm really grateful for, by the way, Trina, and Adam the same, and all of our team are still here, and it's not always easy working at Progressive, and there are a lot of events, you guys know, because you come to a lot of them, but there must be something in the vision, in what we're about, in our values, that makes us not like the others, and constantly reinforcing that will, A, people who like that, they'll stay with you, and B, people who are not like that, they'll naturally move away from you, which you want. So we do it every Friday in the office meeting, vision and values. Where are we going? What are our values? So we'll take 2 more questions. Who's found this useful, by the way? I realise you normally get more breaks and stuff, but hey, I didn't want to give you a break when Matt's here. We want to grill him while he is here. So 2 more questions. Who's got one? Yes, Ian, what's your name?
Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Matt. Great story. 2 questions. Does your business work without you? That's the first question. And would you mind sharing what your big goal is going forward?
Okay, so the first one is, would the business work without me? It's probably links into the second question. But not as much as I'd like at the moment. We're in the stage of growing and developing the business in new markets. You need to be at the front of your business and involved in it to make it happen, because you can have a great team behind you, but they're really looking for you to inspire them and to lead the way. And I guess so my position in the business is the one who's sort of, going into new ground, breaking down the trees and saying, "Come on, guys, follow me. It's all good over here." I think once we get into the markets that we plan to do and get the business to a certain stage, then my role as the entrepreneur, sort of, inspirational leader, probably will change, because the business will then become a lot more about processes, managers, and those 2 things, they're very different skill sets, and they need to work together, but the manager side of things will become a lot more important. And that's, in my business, my father's very good at processes and managing things. My brother Luke is the same. He's a very process type of person. But to lead with that first, unless you've got the opportunities and unless you're moving into new markets, it doesn't work. So I think my goal in probably sort of five years will be to have someone else step in and for the business to run, and then for me maybe to have a more of an ambassador role where I sort of do what I got into the business.
Could I just jump in there with you? And I bet you when he gets to there, he'll set up in China. I bet you he'll do something like that. I mean, if your story, UK sorted, why go to Poland? What, because your dad can speak a bit of Polish? No, because you've got this entrepreneurial fire inside you. Then you're in Poland. Why go to Germany? You can't even speak German. Stupid. No, because you've got USA, the big one to manage. You know, the one to rule. And but